Samantha Roden. I'm an ACE Certified Personal Trainer, and I would like to break down for you today Chapter 4 out of my ACE Certified Personal Trainer Manual and help you go over the notes and pick out stuff that I thought was important as I went through this course and as my practice as a personal trainer. The title to this chapter is The Behavioral of Change and Health Psychology. So pretty important stuff, the way people perceive and think about health and the psychology of exercise, that sort of thing. Some important definitions I thought were important. Health psychology. Early on, the health psychology field began as a field that examined the reasons for illness, and it also studied ways to promote health, treat illness, and improve our healthcare system. Now the individual has been added to this model, and this resulted in a broader picture of health and its correlation with illness. The health belief model. The model is a predictor of people engaging in a health behavior based on perceived threat and the way they may feel regarding a health problem, and they may weigh the pros and cons of adopting a new behavior. The definition of a perceived threat is a level at which a person feels worried about their health problem, or they may feel like, hey, coronary artery disease runs in my family, I may be at risk, maybe I need to start taking care of myself. Let's see, perceived threat is influenced by perceived seriousness, susceptibility, and cues to action, such as your doctor may say, if you don't lose weight, you're going to be an insulin-dependent diabetic, so they try to lose weight to prevent that from happening. All right, I'm going to jump in and talk about exercise. Exercise is a complicated behavior due to perceiving it has taken too much. People perceive it as taking too much time and effort than it actually really does. They feel like they don't have time to come to the gym, but they really do. They feel like it's too much of a bother, and they just don't understand how much it will help them. Adopting healthy behaviors is more challenging depending on the person. The goal of personal trainers is to make lifestyle changes for people or help them to find the lifestyle changes. I'm going to move on and talk about the trans-theoretical model, the TTM. It's pretty important because ACE bases their entire training program and the way you program programs for your client off of this. Also, if you take the ACE certified health coach, of course, you're going to see that pop up again. So let's just talk about the stages. So the stages of change, we have the pre-contemplation change, we have the contemplation change, the preparation change, action stage, and maintenance stage. So I'm going to grab a sip of water to break those down for you. Let's go back to the pre-contemplation stage. This is at the point of where people are sedentary and they're not currently exercising, and they don't see it as a potential point of their life. They don't care. The importance of simply being active in something, in some way, is not present in their life. They're sedentary. They go home and sit on the couch. They don't care. Moving on, the contemplation stage. Sedentary people move on from pre-contemplation into contemplation when they begin considering activity to be important, but they are still not at the point of considering exercise. They're not quite ready yet to commit to make a change. So pre-contemplation is, I don't care, I'm not going to exercise. Contemplation is, yeah, I think I know I should exercise, but I'm choosing not to. Preparation stage, that's the next stage. Now people begin to consider mentally and physically adopting an activity program. Some people might begin going to a gym or occasionally walking in their neighborhood. Some people are now ready to adopt and live an active life. So now they're really starting to think about it like, yeah, I guess maybe I should start working out and exercising and try to decrease my chances of becoming an insulin-dependent diabetic or developing coronary artery disease, or maybe they just want to lose some weight and feel better. So then they move on to the action stage. People are now physically active and adopted some type of training, but this is only for folks that are less than 6 months. So those in the beginning, they're excited, they're coming to you, they're coming to your gym, or you're their personal trainer, you've made them a program, but they're still, only 6 months into it. They're still new. They're still in the baby phase. We move on and talk about the maintenance stage. The maintenance stage is regular physical activity that occurs outside of that 6-month window. So they've been exercising for more than 6 months, and they're maintaining that. That's why it's called the maintenance phase. Backing up a little bit, I wanted to talk about another definition called relapse. Relapse is going back to your old ways if an exercise, perhaps someone told you to stop exercising altogether. This event can happen at any point during the trans-theoretical model. But I see, personally, it happen during the action stage. So they get fired up about it, and they get a couple of months into it, and they just don't want to do it anymore. And we need to help these people stay focused, stay engaged, stay motivated. Let's see. And to talk about some of the other, some of the major general definitions that were in this chapter, I talked about health psychology, the health belief model, relapse, operant conditioning is next. The process by which someone's behaviors are influenced by their consequences, and examines relationships between antecedents, behaviors, and consequences. And then we have consequences, variables that happen after the target behavior and influence in future behavioral change decisions and efforts. Antecedents, variables that come before exercise participation by a client. This could include deciding not to exercise. Then they have behavioral change. It's a series of events where variables before and after a target behavior help in explaining and reinforcing the target behavior. An example would be participation in exercise. Then we have extinction. This is removing a positive stimulus that used to follow a behavior. We have punishment, a negative action intended to decrease the likelihood of a behavior reoccurring. Cognition, thoughts and feelings that could be either antecedents or consequences for overt behaviors. But honestly, of these definitions, I feel like the most important ones were health psychology, the health belief model, relapse, and honestly, that's the ones that were the most important to me. You may feel differently. I would encourage you to read this chapter before looking at or listening to any of my notes. You need to read it for yourself. Okay, let's talk about the process of change. Probably the most important component for personal trainers. This component of the trans-theoretical model entails the process of change that people use when going from one stage to the other. So you can kind of identify where your client is and kind of where you may need to focus your needs and motivation and how to engage them to keep them going. Each transition holds its own set of processes based on decisions by individuals and mental stages where they're at mentally. Readiness and motivation are included. We need to be, as personal trainers, aware of where they are again, and so we can help them. The person would not be, I'm looking at my notes. An example would be someone who is looking for a fitness program to start. So they're going to different gyms, or talking to different personal trainers. This person would not be in the pre-contemplation stage because they are putting some thought into exercise. Because remember, the preparation stage, people are considering mentally and physically to adopt a new program. And they may begin to go to the gym on occasion and start maybe walking in their neighborhood. But the scenario that I just gave, that person was just going to different gyms and looking around. They hadn't started any physical activity yet. Now let's talk about self-efficacy. That's the third component of the trans-theoretical model. I'll refer to that as the TTM because that's a tongue twister. Self-efficacy is important due to its strong relation to exercise adoption and maintenance. Self-efficacy, we've talked about this before. It's one's belief in their own ability to be successful in an exercise. It is both a determinant and an outcome for behavioral change. People in the pre-contemplative and the contemplative stage have always been shown to have a very low level of self-efficacy. The most often found situations in these groups is that people do not feel like they have the ability to work out. I kind of look at self-efficacy as like self-confidence. You don't really get that self-confidence until you start meeting, like related to exercise, until you start meeting some goals and some milestones maybe you set for yourself. For those with low self-efficacy, it is important that trainers create a positive workout experience and give as much knowledge as possible. Increasing these levels of self-efficacy and the contemplative people would hopefully, move them on to the next stage of action. We need to, if they're not really realizing that they're meeting their goals or making progress, we need to bring that to their attention. I personally like to take pictures of people during their process. So I'll take a picture of them in the beginning, and then I'll wait a little bit, maybe a couple of months. I take more pictures as we go along, and I like to put them together and show them I don't think sometimes they realize the progress that they have made, Let's talk about decisional balance. This is the final component of the TTM. This is the component where the person weighs out the pros and cons of starting a new program. When people are in the pre-contemplative and contemplative stages, they typically may have more cons associated with the exercises than people that are looking for a program or participating in one. As people go through the 5 stages, the pros and cons constantly change for them. Let's talk about positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement is when someone gives a positive stimulus that will increase the likelihood of a behavior happening again in the future, reoccurring. If we talk about negative reinforcement, that is the subtraction or complete avoidance of adverse stimuli following an undesirable behavioral, thus increasing the chances of a behavior will reoccur. Let's move on. Just flipping through. We talk about stimulus control a little bit. It's an effective behavior change strategy that involves adjusting the environment in order to increase the chance of healthy behaviors. There are some simple stimulus controls to implement, like laying your workout clothes out early the night before to make it easier so you can get to the gym earlier, having your bag packed up already, carrying the gym bag with you every day in the trunk of your car so you have it. Choosing a gym that's close to you instead of one that's far away. And 2 people are more likely to choose a gym that's closer to their house. And absolutely one of the best stimulus controls that we can do is surround yourself with like-minded people with goals that are similar to yours. This can lead to having natural support systems and create a positive workout experience. Let's talk about self-monitoring. This can help clients track their progress or lack of progress in their programs. This process requires a lot of honesty and self-reflection. The only committed clients will be able to successfully self-monitor. You have to be real with themselves. Or am I really pushing, as hard as I can, or putting forth the effort that I should? Am I slacking off? And it has to do with consistency. Are you consistently going to the gym or to your workouts with your personal trainer like you said you would? Just kind of being real with yourself. Keeping a log of both food and exercise can assist people with adherence to nutrition and exercise program. So it'd be a good idea, to sit down every week and talk to them about their diet, kind of look over their food journal, or if they log their food into apps or whatnot, to look at that with them. Self-monitoring techniques allow people to look back on their activity and food intake that really monitor the way that what they are actually doing. Let's talk about shaping. Shaping is a process that requires the use of reinforcements in order to achieve a gradual increase of target behavior. You begin a skill with a client can currently do, and gradually trainers increase it. So we start with little small baby steps. So one exercise may be very hard for a person to do initially. So we'll start with, something a little easier and add on it as we go. Looking at cognitive behavioral techniques, they influence the changes in behaviors by targeting people's thoughts toward a physical activity. Then the first step in a cognitive behavioral technique is to identify problematic beliefs that might stop their change. The next step is to change these thoughts. So there's 4 stages of cognitive behavioral techniques. There's goal setting, feedback, decision making, and self-monitoring. We're almost done. Goal setting. This is the most widely used technique for folks staying involved in their exercise program. Even so, it is often used ineffectively, though. This is because people tend to set some goals, start a program, and then forget to check in or set new goals as they go. In order to overcome this challenge, we should always use the SMART goal guidelines. And if we back up, in Chapter 3, we talked about specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and I forget what T is right off the top of my head, but you can refer back to Chapter 3. We should always use the SMART goal guidelines. Time bound. It's time. That's what it is. To set goals. You think about it. So, is it specific, measurable? Can I measure it? Is it attainable? Is it relevant or realistic? And time bound. Now, looking at feedback, there's intrinsic and extrinsic feedback. The most widely used feedback involves simply reinforcing and encouraging their clients. This is very useful in the beginning, but as time goes on, for us to increase workout adherence amongst clients, we must back off from the amount of external feedback and allow the clients to internally provide their own feedback. This builds the client's ability to succeed on their own in the future, because we can't always be there with them. Decision making. Effective and helpful decision making can be taught to clients by giving control over their programs and the participation in them. A trainer should not make all of the decisions when it comes to their clients, but instead trainers should give them information of the way to make their own decisions. We're there to help them and guide them, train them along, but we can't hold their hand during the entire process. We should guide our clients more than we tell them what to do. And the last topic we're going to talk about is self-monitoring. Self-monitoring is an effective cognitive behavioral technique that we discussed in depth earlier in talking about self-monitoring. To restate, self-monitoring basically can help clients track their own progress or lack of progress in their program. The process requires a lot of honesty and self-reflection and just kind of being real with themselves, looking at those food journals. If they keep track of their exercise, how often they're coming to see you, that sort of thing. And I'm just flipping back through anything else that looking for anything else that might be important that I missed. I think the biggest thing for me on the test was they talked about relapse and what stage that was most commonly in. And that was the active phase, because they're less than 6 months into their program. They're fired up initially, and then they just burn out. They hit a brick wall and just stop, or they just burn out. All right, guys. I guess that's it. And stay tuned. I'll go over chapter 5 next